Most of us grow up hearing stories, and it's
Mm.
interesting how we usually lose touch with that side of ourselves when we grow up, and we don't become storytellers anymore, and we just speak for the sake of speaking. Was there anything in particular that attracted you to say, you know what, well, I want to move forward in this direction and become a storyteller?
Yeah, so I don't know that we necessarily lose touch. We just don't do it consciously, right? Because I mean, you're still telling stories every day in the work. How do you convince people to do certain things or to see certain things from a particular point of view? It's through stories, right? And when you think about the world of business, when you think about your family, etc., you're constantly coming up with stories that you tell people to get them to see things a certain way. So for me, it's really, I don't think we lose touch. I just think that we stop doing it strategically, right? So I think for me, it's about, I've always been aware of the fact that stories are told all the time. I just switched to how do I do it strategically with a specific purpose in mind? And the purpose for me goes back to being able to tell stories to move clients' objectives forward. It goes back to being able to tell stories to move the African narrative forward, or to tell a more positive narrative of Africa. So it's about like storytelling for storytelling's sake versus storytelling with a strategic purpose and objective in mind.
If anyone follows you on LinkedIn and they're listening to this right now, they'll know how often you post about what's going on in the continent and how you try and
Mm.
ensure that more people are able to hear what's going on. Do you think there was a deliberate effort in ensuring that African stories, especially successful African stories, are hidden from the media or from the masses?
Well, I always think that there's an agenda to everything. And I think that, when a number of different things. First, what I always say, whoever owns the mic owns the message. I think you actually posted that on your LinkedIn one time. Thank you for
I
that.
did.
And I deeply believe in that because I think that whoever owns the platform that the stories are told on gets to curate and to choose which stories are told and for what purpose. So I really am also such a strong advocate of ownership of media platforms by Africans themselves if we're going to be able to tell our own stories. And so I'm very pleased that we get to live in a time where you can start your own media platform by having this podcast. I use my social media platforms as my mic, to be able to amplify African stories, and others in the ecosystem of narrative building and storytelling have their own platforms. So the digital access that we now have makes it so much easier for us to be able to tell the stories that we want to tell. But yes, absolutely. Previously, when you look at the ownership of the media, it was very, very scant in terms of, I mean, how many Africans do you know owned any sort of media platforms, whether it's broadcast, print, digital, or whatever, 25, 30 years ago. So it's no surprise then that the narrative of the continent was muffled and that it followed a specific agenda based on the politics of the time, the economic dynamics of the time, and the social fabric of the societies in which we lived. So, but that's changing, and I'm very, very happy to see it change.
Yeah, it's changing, and I think more and more young people are now, taking it in the internet to start, to start to create platforms that give them an opportunity to be able to tell their stories, which is quite moving, and
Absolutely.
it's really inspiring to see, right? Given the history that we have had with, the way African stories were portrayed or they are told, and recently
Exactly.